All right, we are back again on He Said.
She said.
And I'm Michael.
And I'm Katie.
This is Katie Byrne again in Sonoma County. She's a marriage and family counselor out here again in beautiful Sonoma. And again, thank you for inviting me out to your home. Let's jump right in because, as you said, I left you hanging. You know, we were talking about sex and
story of my life.
Yeah, left you hanging. So that's not a good thing. That's a big no.
Abandoned again.
So let's talk about love. Let's talk about sex. Let's end with love in this podcast. Let's talk about sex and talk about sex addiction. Go ahead and tell us.
Okay.
About
well, you know what I wanted to say, Michael, is when it comes to relationships, when it comes to sex, when it comes to people want love, they want to get along, whether it's sex, money, whatever, and they want to enjoy their love relationships before they die, you know. But the thing that gets in the way of sex and love in general is that we are bottled up inside. Some of us use alcohol. I mean, I've become very familiar with a program called moderation management that I want to mention to the public because it's for people who do not want to go to AA but want to manage their drinking. So the Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous for people who are confused, lonely, or wanting more sex or obsessing on it. And there's the eating issue. There are many addictions, not to mention, I'm not going to talk about opioids or anything, but there are ways that we dull ourselves, that we push ourselves down. Eating is one of them. I was obese. I know what it's like to turn to food for comfort and for love. And it's all of these kinds of things get in the way of our connections. It's not that we're bad people because all of us have addictions. Everybody has some addiction, even if it's to your cell phone. Human beings are scared to death of each other. And they either overwhelm each other, or they dominate, or they withdraw. And really what we want is not to avoid through addictions or avoid the closeness. What we really want is to get what sex brings us is this kind of tender feeling. Good sex, in my opinion, is tender and can have other aspects to it. But it comes from you and I having conversations about what really matters to us, what makes us feel loved.
Right. So that's bringing the physicality of sexual behavior. That's intercourse or foreplay or play itself, bringing it inside instead of putting it out there. So when we talk about swingers, we talk about bondage, we talk about all kinds of different sex play. Do you think that some of those things have arisen out of an addiction to what sex does for you in terms of endorphins and the feeling? Do you think that that's why people go all out like this and they're swinging and they're...
You know, I do. I mean, I do have people in my life who have various ways that they express their sexuality. And I think that's okay because it's an exploration. But what I believe is that underneath our dysfunctional relationships or our harmful habits, sexual or otherwise, is a powerlessness. That deep down, I think this is something that is not talked about enough, I don't think. That right now, and you can see it played out politically, we have voted people into play who we thought had power because we don't feel we have it. And so we can play out our power in sex or in the home and harm each other. But what we really need to feel is valued and feel like our power is in our own personal self-valuing.
And I mean, let me play devil's advocate a bit, but I think that's, do you think that's across the board between men and women? Or do you think that women want to feel valued? Men don't really care about feeling valued. They want to feel enjoyed. I don't know, you know what I mean? I wonder if that's...
I mean, John Gray said men want to feel respected and women want to feel cherished.
Mm-hmm.
But you can use whatever term you want, but I think that's a good point.
Well, that basically means the same thing. So let's get down to kind of nuts and bolts. I think that if a man is in a relationship with a woman and he is feeling, let's say that this is an average regular guy. He's average, so he's not all that super hot and well endowed like all the superstars in the porn business. So he has a little inadequacy thing going. He's average, but he still feels inadequate. He's in fairly average shape, so he's not six-pack abs and rock hard this and that and the other. So he is engaging in something that's putting it out there. He's naked. He's putting it out there. Does he have the athleticism that she wants? Does he have the tools? In fact, one of the things that Jamie said in a very, very early podcast, if you listen to these in order, she said, when I asked her the question, does size matter? She said, well, I like the question more, is bigger better? And I said, oh, I never thought of that. So he's thinking bigger is better, and she might be thinking that size matters, for example, because you got to have something. So there are issues that they're dealing with. In his head, he's dealing with these issues, and he's trying to fantasize these down. And one of the podcasts we had before, we talked about virgins. We talked about guys who like relationships with inexperienced women, because some of them feel that they have, since the person has nothing to compare them to, what the heck? I mean, they got to be at the top of her list if she has nothing to compare them to. When you're entering a relationship and you're a virgin, and not just a sexual virgin, but a virgin of love, you have never been in love before, and that might be because you're very, very young, and you walk into a relationship and you take the normal steps that people take. You know, they have sex, they are romantic, they make love. Do you think that one first event sets the pace for the rest of their life, and it's going to be really difficult for them to change the course once they set that in motion from whatever the first experience is, good or bad?
Well, I think that all of our first early experiences give us an imprint, and so it is difficult to change. But I think humans are creative creatures, and I do think we change, especially with intention. That was something I wanted to say earlier, which is in conversation with a couple, between two people or more, it's very important you say your intention. My intention here is to have a wonderful sex life, and I'm wondering how you feel about my having a small penis.
That's a very good point.
Or, etc. I knew one couple, he could not get erections and was terrified for years in that marriage that she was unhappy. And then when they finally talked about it, she said, I don't care about intercourse. I like oral sex.
Right, exactly.
So what a relief that was.
Yeah, what a relief.
So, it's still, but I think what men have to get more comfortable with is self-reflection. I find that men don't naturally want to look at, why do I feel this way? What do I feel? How do I talk to my partner about this? How do I talk to my date about this?
Yeah, I think that, let me just jump right in there, because I don't think that men say that to themselves. How do I do this? How do I do that? They basically just say, how do I get the result I want? They don't really want to know how to do it. They don't want to know what the best way is, what to learn, how to communicate. I don't think they want to do that. They just want the results. How do I get the results that I want? That's what they want.
I think you're really right, and it's because as little boys, you're reinforced if you win at the baseball game, or if your little toy truck is the best toy truck. So it's true, but men have to change.
Men do have to change. And I get that. I sure hate getting beat up sometimes with conversations about how men do things, and I don't agree with them.
Women
and I'm a
have
man.
to change too.
And
Women
we
are
all
crabby. Women are like cactuses. I mean, we're tough because we had the babies and we wanted to protect. Erich Fromm said in The Art of Loving, love is active concern. That means, he says, it is a discipline. It is like any other art, which is why his book is called The Art of Loving. If you want to learn the guitar, you work at it. and you work relatively hard at
You
it.
practice.
Practice. So that would be
I'm a big
my
fan of that, by the way.
summary for all of these topics. Is I think we have this myth that love happens and it's low maintenance, and drama free and baggage free. That's a myth.
Right. That's a very funny thing, because when we've talked about acting out, the act of making love, the act of wooing someone. I hate to use that term wooing. That's just, it's something that, what do they use in the 30s?
It's okay.
So, but the act of hitting on somebody and trying to light them up for what's happening later, there is an agenda that men have. Men want to get to that end result. They want to meet someone. They go out to a club. Let's do this little scenario. They go out to a club and they see this hot lady across the way, somebody they're attracted to, and they make the move on her, and they put their little game together, and they do whatever it is that they do in that dance. But the reason for doing all that is, as you said in an earlier podcast, they want to get to the business of physicality. And so you're surprised because, and I was surprised when you said it, that the men you meet in the near 70s want to get right to it. I thought that was a young thing.
No, it's not.
The 20s or 30s, they want to get right to it because, wow. But I'll tell you what, I would see why it is that they want to get right to it, because I think that finding a partner, if you're looking for a friends with benefits relationship and you want to just have somebody to have benefits with, you want to have benefits with somebody who's safe and clean, because if you had a partner, she or he would be safe and clean. That's their partner, assuming they don't cheat on you, they'd be safe and clean. So if you were with a partner and you want to have a friends with benefits relationship, you would be cheating on your partner, but you would want to cheat with someone who's safe and clean, especially if you cared about your partner, because you don't want to bring anything back, at least not back to your partner, your innocent, unknowing partner.
Harm to self or others is not okay.
Right. We assume as we get older that each of our partners is safe and clean because they're probably not playing the field as much. So maybe that's the reason why the guys get out there and they're 75 years old, 72 years old, and they see a 69.
That's a good point.
And they say, well, she's probably not sleeping all around, so let's get busy. And I can see that. I can relate to that. You think, well, I want to make sure that we end on a good note when we get to that good note. But first off, I had to ask you this question. A few of the ladies that I interviewed earlier were in their 30s. And then I interviewed a woman who is late 40s. And she told me when she hit 40 years old, man, she went ballistic. All she thought about was sex. And I said, well, I understood that guys reach their peak at 18 and women at 40. So the funny thing is that the ladies who were in their 30s, they were ramping up for that.
Right.
Because they're starting to get out there. And all of the ladies that I talked with had just come out of a long-term relationship of maybe 12 or so years. So they had relationships that started in their teens or maybe 20 years old. Now they're 36, 37, 38 years old, and they're out of that relationship. So they're out sowing the wild oats. So is there clinical proof that women do hit that stride at 40 and then they just go nuts and then they're hit by that curse of menopause in their 50s? What a cruel world.
Yes, I do think a lot of us there's a wave of hormonal stuff that happens.
Yes, right.
And there's no question about that. But I also think a lot of this has to do with our upbringing and where we are. There are a lot of people in my age group at the 70-year curve that want sex and want to get along and are trying to take small amounts of Viagra. And I have found testosterone to be very powerful for myself.
For women to take.
Oh, yeah.
And men.
It's great stuff.
Oh, wow.
I think that the thing about relationships is we do have to think about our own patterns and our own habits and how if you want a certain kind of life, you have to look at how to make that happen and what are you doing, what am I doing that's sabotaging it or that can make it better. Mm-hmm. And we have to notice how we interact with people, how we affect them. But also in dating, what I've found is a lot of people have what I call a broken picker. That means that they don't pick the right people. Mm-hmm. And it's broken because they have an old pattern, an old imprint.
Yes.
I'm going to pick someone like mom. I'm going to pick someone like dad. I'm going to find a narcissistic, overwhelming, domineering person and then be miserable.
Yeah, yeah.
So that has to, so I think bottom line is we have to take responsibility for change.
Well, let me do this, and I'm taking responsibility. No, in closing, let me give you a little bit of a commercial, because I think that everyone who wants to have an effective, healthy relationship needs a little bit of support in that, and that I think that couples counseling is a perfect way for that to happen. So you gotta just say, I'm going to do it. It doesn't happen in one session or two. So I understand that. So I'm going to encourage people to consider hooking up with a couples counselor that